Hey everyone, my name is David Rao and I'm the music teacher who blogs at makemomentsmatter.org. You can also find my ideas on Facebook, obviously, on Instagram, on Pinterest, and a variety of other platforms when you search for my name, David Rao, or Make Moments Matter. I'm excited to be back with you all this week to share about my lesson plans for the week and some of my favorite resources to use, resources and ideas and techniques as I teach third grade. This week I'm talking about my third grade lessons, and I'll also be talking a little bit about how I introduce the 16th note with my third graders and the very first activity we do to use that knowledge and implement that knowledge. Before I get too far, I just wanted to say thanks for everyone who tuned in last week. And if you weren't able to watch the video live, you can always watch the replay. The videos are always archived on Facebook or on YouTube. And last week I tried something new. I tried to take the audio from the video and to turn it into a podcast to put into the podcast feed of the Make Moments Matter Music Education podcast. I know I was able to do it because it showed up on my phone, but I don't know if it was helpful. So if you listen to this video on the podcast, shoot me an email. My email is makemomentsmatter@gmail.com, and I would love to get your feedback. Was it helpful to put that audio from this video in a podcast? Did you even know that it was possible to do that? Do you know if it showed up on the feed? Like, what was it worth it? So I'd love to hear your feedback about that. Let's see, a couple things. Last week I talked about all my lesson plans from the week, my kindergarten through fifth grade lesson plans, and then I did a focus on first grade. My lessons actually haven't changed since last week. I'm on that weird 8-day school rotation, and so because I'm on that long rotation where I only see my students once every 8 school days, this week I will not be recapping all my kindergarten through fifth grade lessons because you already saw that last week, and if you didn't, you can always go back and watch it anytime. Instead, I'm going to talk a little bit about learning centers, and I'm going to talk about the signage I use for that and some ideas about that, and then I'm going to jump into third grade where I talk about my lessons from this week, and we're talking about 16th notes. We're visiting the note neighborhood, and we're doing a little bit of rhythmic dictation. So I'm excited to share with you a little bit about that. So as always, your questions, your comments, the things you leave in the feed for these videos is really, really helpful. And it's cool to see people who are watching the video along with you respond to your comment or leave their own comment or question. It's just sort of cool to see people dialoguing. I've realized I'm not able as easily to go back through the Instagram feed, so if you're commenting there, hopefully other people are commenting back with you, because it's hard for me once the video is over to go back and do commentary there. So Instagrammers, if you're watching, jump in and talk with each other about that stuff. Okay, so let me talk with you a little bit about learning centers. I feel like a lot of the stress that people have about learning centers, like, it's such a fun idea, and people love the idea of using centers in the classroom. They love the thought about using that strategy, but people get caught up in the how and the why and but what if this, and then but where do I get that thing, and how do I make this work? That's the stressful part, the logistics. So I've written now, I think, 3 or 4 blog posts about different things, about centers, how to use centers in different ways, how to organize centers, and just today I wrote a whole post about signage for centers. And that's just one more little thing about centers, but I hope to, as much as I can, try and break down piece by piece little things, because there's so much about centers that you just sort of have to try and fail at. And I've done a lot of that already, where I have used and failed. And so I want to share some of those insights that I received with you. So one of the things I realized with students, and I like I said, I did a blog post about this. So if you're curious after the video and you want to see more pictures and sort of read more a longer breakdown, you can go to my blog, which is makemomentsmatter.org, and it's the most recent, the first thing that should show up in the blog portion, where you can sort of see more pictures and things. But I realized that with students, a lot of kids just really need a visual. And so when we're doing centers, those centers, I generally tend to put them sort of around the perimeter of the room. So if I'm having 8 centers, there would be 8 little stations all around the room with their own thing. Maybe one is doing rhythm centers, maybe one is doing ukulele exploration, one is doing rhythm reading, one is doing composition. I mean, they could do all sorts of different things, and that really is its own conversation. But one of the things that I like to do is I like to have signs at each station. I try and usually do a little printout that just sort of explains the activity in the center if they need it. But then in each place, I try and put a little sign that says like Station 1, Station 2, Station 3, because one of the stressful things about centers is learning the rotation. And people, when I talk with them about it, they're like, yeah, I feel like students would have gotten that quicker. And I don't want to spend my time teaching kids how to do the rotation because then they're missing out on content. And it's tricky because if you ever get to go to a one of your grade level peers, so like a first grade teacher or a third grade teacher, and you get to see their students doing centers, that is not a fair example of centers, because usually those teachers are doing centers every day for a half an hour or an hour or whatever, but those kids have learned the rotation because they do it every day. So for me, it's not so easy. I see them once every 8 school days, which means in some instances, I see them once every other week, if there are days off or snow days or whatever. So for me, it's hard. I don't get that repetition. So I just try and make it a little bit easier on kids to learn the rotation and know the rotation. So the first thing I do is if I put centers all around the perimeter of the room, we just move clockwise or counterclockwise. There's no jumping across the room or doing anything weird. I try and make that a very clean rotation. Sometimes I'll draw like a map on the board or print out a map that each kid can sort of have at the stations of, if you go here, then you go here, then you go here, because a lot of kids, that visual helps them. And I have an example of that in the blog post of one of the maps that I've made that just sort of has a circle and then different stations sort of around it. But another thing that I do is at each station, I'll have like a sign that says Station 1, Station 2, Station 3. So then when kids are rotating, they know exactly where to go. So here's an example of that. So like I would have at the first place, I'm sorry, I know I'm using the FaceTime camera, so it's backwards, but I'm assuming you all can flip the idea in your head. So I do like Station 1, and then at the next station, I would have the Station 2 sign, so that the kids know, they can follow a sequence like that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They can follow that. And that makes it a little bit easier for them because they know exactly where they're going next. One of the things I did when I did Recorder Karate stations a few years ago, Recorder Karate follows the belt color system. So it goes white, yellow, orange, green, purple, blue, red, brown, black. I'm trying to remember because it's been a little while. But I made the stations the colors. So the first station, there are only 8 stations, not 9. The first station was yellow, and then there was an orange station, and then there was, so each of the stations had the colors. So the kids knew the progression, so they would know, I'm at the yellow station, I need to go to orange next. And Station 8, Station 8, the black belt station was our testing station. So they knew that, they go around and do all sorts of things. And then when I got to the last one, that was where they test. But again, I just used a color coding system. And in that case, it was, it followed Recorder Karate. You could do rainbow order. You could do whatever you wanted. You could do Station A, B, C, D, E. It really doesn't matter. But giving them that sort of sequential idea of knowing, okay, I'm at Station 4. Even if I started at Station 4, I go to Station 5 next. Kids aren't going to be like, well, I'm at Station 4, so I need to go to Station 15 next. It's sequential, so that's good. So one of the things that I've also done is I've tried to figure out a good way to put those station signs out there. If you have printed out the capability, if you have it printed out and laminated, you could just tape it up on your wall, right? So that's an option. But I know that a lot of people have things on their wall already. And so taping something on top of it, it could get lost, the picture could get lost, or it could mess up what you have on the wall, or kids, trying to help you could pull it down to try, cleaning up at the end of centers and then pull something else off the wall. So I just generally don't like doing that. Instead, I like having the station sort of set up and then on the ground with the materials. I like having a little sign there. So in the blog post, you can see I tried something where I put the station sign, like that's, this piece of paper with Station 4 or whatever, in a dry erase pocket. These things are golden. They're magical. You can slip a piece of paper in here. Kids can write on it with dry erase marker and just wipes off. It's clean. It's amazing. It's easy to get signs in and out or get papers in and out. I love them. they're great. And I have a link to them on my blog post. But one of the great things is that you can use them for all sorts of things. So I would put a station sign in here, and then I DIY'd, rigged up like an old DVD case to like pop open on the back, and I have pictures on the blog, and it's terrible. So that didn't work for a couple of reasons. It was really bulky. They were sort of hard to put away. When you did, you're stacking DVD. It was weird. So I do not recommend that, but I did put a picture of it on the blog for you to laugh at me at. But also mostly to see these cool pockets, and they are totally worth it. They're great for actually using in centers to put worksheets in and then have kids complete. But that didn't work so well. I also went to the Dollar Tree and I found these really cool photo frames. The Dollar Tree, everything is just $1, but these are cool. You can put a sign in, and then it just it sits on the ground or on the table or whatever, and it comes in a vertical or a horizontal format. The only thing that's a little bit annoying about these is that they are so easy to get things out that kids could potentially just pull things out and then mess with your station sign. That's the first annoying thing. But the second annoying thing is if you look at the dimensions, it's 8 by 10. And we print 8.5 by 11. So if you use this, you'd have to like format your sign so it's the right size and then cut off the extra, and that's just a pain. So I don't highly recommend these work pretty well, but I don't highly recommend them super well, especially if you're gonna, I don't know how many centers you're gonna do. If you want like, I don't know, if you want like 20 so that the 8 for 4th grader already set, you never have to change them, and the 8 for 5th grader set and you don't have to change them, and a couple extras, that can get expensive. The one thing that I eventually ended up doing, I went online and I found, I used to work retail, and in the retail world, they would send you these pictures and graphics and things all the time you had to put up in the store, and they had these little stands that would go on the back of pictures that would just fold out. They were light cardboard, and they adhered to the back of the picture, and then you just go and it sat perfectly. So I went looking, and guess what? I found those on Amazon. And when you put it on, it looks like this. I don't know if you can sort of see that. It's white on white. But it just adheres right on because there's like a sticky back to it. And then it folds out just like this. So then it makes a little propped up portion. And then when you're ready, it just sets on the table or on the ground or whatever. And it's, oh, sorry, Instagram folks, you can't see that. But it's just really easy, and it's simple. And then when you're ready to put it away, you just press back the way it went. It's so easy. I can't do it. No, I can do it. There it goes. And then it just flattens down. So you can just flatten it down. You could put it in. You could put it actually in the folder with your center materials if you want. But I usually keep them separate, and I keep all of them in one thing. So along with that blog post, I just released a free product in my TPT store that has a set of signs just like this. I think like 1 through 15. I don't know if you could have 15 stations. That's a lot of stations. I would not recommend that. But I have that in my TPT stores. That's freebie in there. And then also, I sort of like this, but I use this for when I do workshops about centers. These are the signs I use. So instead of these specific words, I just sort of flipped it. So now it says like rhythm station in full color like this. And then another one might say instrument exploration station. And another one might say, oh, sorry, recorder station. But I put these in with that file on TPT and that freebie so that you have a bunch of different colorful signs for all different sorts of things. And if you go through there and you're like, yeah, well, you don't have melodica station, and that's what I use a lot of, like, let me know, and I'll add it into the set and just refresh on TPT so everyone can have that option if they want. I don't know, harmonica station, I don't know what you might put in your centers, but that's all in there as a freebie. And I will link in the show notes Tracy's asking about those stands from Amazon. They are so cool. And again, I have them because I do these workshops about, centers and stuff. And so I take these signs. Well, guess what? These all have this on the back. I think I got a set of 25 of those little rectangular, or those little stands, cardboard stands. I think it was 25 for like $13 or something, which is not bad, especially if you think, if you went and bought 25 of these plastic stands, it'd be $25, so plus tax. So I think that they're super great. and that's a fun option. But like I said, I made that free product in my TPT store with all those signs. So like if you're trying to get, even if you're like, well, that's cool, but I don't know if that's exactly going to work for me. Well, this can give you sort of an idea of what you might want to do. And like I said, if there's something in there like Ashley saying keytar, because apparently she has keytars. But if you have something like that you're like, that's cool, but I don't use that specific thing, let me know, send me an email, and I'll add whatever it is that you really love that you have into the file. And like I said, there are a bunch in color, there are a bunch in black and white, so you can use sort of different things, and I'm hoping to expand that as I go. So that's something that's a resource for a lot more people. But like I said, that resource is there. It's freebie on my TPT store. And also on my blog is the blog about this. And you can see these pictures again, sort of a better detailed photo of what those stands look like, so that when you're getting ready to do centers, you can sort of reference and see. There are some other blog posts on my blog about centers, different types of centers and logistics, things like that. But my hope is that this resource helps you out as well. Actually, in about a month, a little less than a month, I'm going to be presenting at Texas Music Educators about learning centers. So this may come back up, but not quite as in-depth as this. But there are a lot of cool things that you can learn about learning centers. But like I said, it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of failing and then learning from that. So I hope that I have failed enough times that I can give you some of those, hey, I learned this might be a helpful thing to help you figure that out. So anyway, that's a little bit about centers. I'm hoping to add more about that very soon on the blog, on the podcast, and a bunch of other places. But now I want to tell you about third grade, because I shared a little bit about my center signs. And like I said, if you want to learn more, there are a lot of places you can go to learn more on my blog and stuff. But I want to tell you about third grade because I love this lesson. It's a super fun lesson. Up to this point, my kindergarten, first, second, and halfway through third grade, we use notes that are quarter note, eighth notes, quarter rest, half note, half rest, whole note, whole rest. And kids, they always ask about the 16th notes, right? Because I think part of that is because any like kid's shirt that they get like has a 16th notes on it. Like artists use that 16th notes a lot because they think, oh, it's such a recognizable thing. But kids, we just don't have a chance to learn it until third grade because it's really a trickier concept. So my kids don't learn it until third grade, and I know some other schools where they don't actually learn it until fourth, but I think third grade's a good time for it. I think anything before third grade, in my experience, has been tricky to introduce 16th notes because maybe they'd understand it, but I don't know that they can really implement it as well. And part of that is maybe they understand it in their head, but it's also a hand-eye coordination thing. If I want them to play 16th notes or pat or whatever, they have a lot more dexterity when they're in third grade than when they're in second grade, so a little bit more able to deal with that. But like I said, that's just my experience. Maybe you're like, my preschoolers do 16th notes. Well, I would love to meet those kids. So anyway, I'm going to show you the whole lesson and sort of how I introduce all of that. It starts when they walk in the door, they come in, they sit down. Before we do our introduction or before we do our attendance, I just have them do a quick echo. And I say, be my echo, and I'll do a pattern. I always start with that pattern. I know everybody hates that pattern, but I start with that pattern, and then they do it, and then I do something more difficult. They go again. Right, okay. So I'm just doing 4-beat patterns. They're really simple. Then I switch to padding, and I say, well, let me just do something different, guys. How about this? And I'm doing hands separate. I'm not doing hands together. I do hands separate. They repeat. They repeat. Of course, I'm using only quarter notes and eighth notes at this point. They repeat. And I say, if we were going to, if this were a house, we would probably say there are 2 levels. We would say that padding was the main level, the ground level, the first floor. And then if the padding was the first floor, this would be what? And they say, oh, it's the upstairs. Yeah, it'd be the upstairs. It'd be the upper level. Okay, and in the Orff world, we call these different levels of body percussion. My kids sort of talk about this before now, but this is a time when I'm just sort of making it clearer. And I say, okay, great. So I'm going to use 2 levels, 2 different things. I'm going to use clapping and padding. So you get to be my echo, exactly what I do. So then I'll do, they repeat, they repeat. And then I actually mix the levels. They repeat, they repeat, they repeat. And I just sort of do things, I'm sort of sneaking in the 16th note a little bit, but not like making it a big deal yet. Then I flip, so that instead of going from clapping to padding, we're doing padding to clapping. And they repeat, and then we really mix things up. That's tricky when, switching from one level to the next is tricky, but switching down and back is trickiest of all, it seems like. Just stuff like that. And then I say, you know what? I think I want to add a third level. If padding is the main floor and clapping is the second floor, what would snapping be? And they say, it's the attic. Some people say that. Some kids are like, I live in an apartment, so it's the third floor. Or someone might say the roof or whatever. I'm like, great, yeah, you get it. You get the idea that it's different levels. So now we have how many levels? And they say 3 levels. Okay, great. Now I'm gonna use all 3 levels. They do their thing. They do their thing. Anytime I introduce a new level, I do a really simple pattern to start. Like if I were gonna do snapping, I would not start with. Like they can't do that. Just switching to the new level is difficult enough, but then giving them a simple pattern helps them sort of make that transition. So we do all 3, and then I say, you know what, I'm not gonna today, but if I wanted to do a 4th level, top level, second level, main level, what could I do for the basement? Because I've already got an attic, I've already got a second floor, I've got a main floor, what could I do for the basement? Our house doesn't have a basement right now, so we're not going to use it, but if we did have a basement, what would we use? And they say, stomping. Yeah, stomping. And so then they sort of have the idea of this house where there's the main level, second floor, attic, and basement, and we could use all 4. And those are the 4 main levels of body percussion that we use on a day-to-day basis anyway, so I like giving them that visual now so that later on when we use more body percussion, they can sort of think like, well, what are we going to use? And what could we use? So that's just a simple, that takes 3 minutes, if that. And then I do a quick attendance thing just to make sure they're all there. I've talked before on the video about why I do attendance. I know a lot of people don't do attendance. And then, once we've done that, then I say, you know what, I have a song, but you can't do it seated on your spots. You're going to need to make a big class-size circle. And so they make their big class-size circle. And I'm realizing I don't have my ukulele out. They make their big class-size circle, and I get a pitch. Ooh, out of tune, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I say, this song has very difficult words. Please listen very carefully. The song goes like this. Circle to the left, old brass wagon, circle to the left, old brass wagon, circle to the left, old brass wagon, you're the one, my darling. It takes them a second to focus in because I said, oh, it's very difficult. So they're like, oh, well, that's weird. And then they're standing by their friends. We're in our big circle, so they're standing by their friends, so they're like, do I really want to listen or not? So it takes them a second to listen, and then they go, wait, he's repeating the same words over and over. And I say, those were very difficult, weren't they? And they go, no. I'm like, you're right. I was joking. They're not difficult. It's the same words over and over again. Listen again. Circle to the left, old brass wagon, circle to the left, old brass wagon, circle to the left, old brass wagon, you're the one, my darling. And I say, if you listen to those words, it's going to tell you what you need to do. It's going to tell you the actions of the song. Listen very carefully. And if you can figure out what the action, what we need to do, raise your hand. And I sing it again. And so they raise their hand and they go, circle to the left. Yes, you're going to circle to the left. Great. So let's all take hands and let's circle to the left. And sometimes you get blowback about take hands. My kids don't usually because we've just sort of done this sort of forever. But, if we get a thing about take hands, I usually say, oh, well, why don't you just grab a wrist? Some way that you're connected. But otherwise, it doesn't matter. Okay, here we go. And I try not to make a big deal out of it, if possible, because then it will become a big deal. But I just say, take hands. But I don't say, hold hands. That doesn't apply with kids. Take hands, grab hands, but hold hands, that's something different. So I say just take hands, and then we go. So then we are circling left. We're circling sort of a clockwise motion, that doesn't mean anything to kids. So we circle to our left and we go all around the circle. I say, oh my gosh, you're so great. And by this time they've heard me sing it 4 times, right? And I say, if you're ready to sing, it's your turn. Here we go. Do you know the words? They're very difficult. And they're like, no, they're not. Right, they're not difficult. Okay, here we go. So then we sing and we circle to our left, right? Okay, so then once we've done that, I say, you know what? We've been circling to the left. Now maybe we should circle to the... And they go, right. I'm like, you're right. Okay, here we go. So then we change the words. Circle to the right, old brass wagon. Circle to the right, old brass wagon. Circle to the right, old brass wagon. You're the one, my darling. Oh, wow, you did a great job. The first time we circled to the left. And then the second time we circled to the... And they usually fill in the answers. Right, right. Okay. Now we can't be circling to left or right anymore. We've used both directions. So now we're gonna have to do something else. Here's what we gotta do next. Just listen, it goes like this. In and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass wagon, you're the one, my darling. And I don't know why, but every time I do this, it never fails. When it's time for kids to go in and out, they stand there like this and they go, in and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass. They don't ever do what I want them to do. I say, oh, that was so great. But you know what? I have another way to do it. This is the fancy way to do it. You're gonna do this. And I do that, well, what most folk dancers do. I do like, in and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass wagon, you're the one, my darling. And they see me move in for a phrase, out for a phrase, in for a phrase, out for a phrase. And I say, good, you figured it out. This time, figure out, I go in and out, figure out what word is the magic word to make me switch directions from going in to going out to going in to going out. Watch again and see if you can figure out the correct word that makes me switch. In and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass wagon, you're the one, my darling. And they usually eventually decide that it's wagon. And that's what I'm going for. So then I say, great, it's your turn to do it. And take hands and let's walk in until we say wagon and then switch and go out till we say wagon in. And so we try it. Okay, in and out, old brass wagon, in and out, old brass wagon, in and out. So, and I say, oh, right, except this is a super fancy way to dance and there's one special thing you gotta do. Pretend that in the center of the circle on the ceiling is a super strong magnet. And our hands are made of metal. So when we come into the circle, it's gonna go in and out, old brass wagon, and it's gonna pull your arms up. And then you're gonna have to go in and out, old brass wagon, because when you get further away from the magnet, it's not as magnetic. In and out, old brass wagon. Oh, so good. You're the one, my darling. And they go, oh, that's such a great visual. Well, they don't say that, but it is a great visual for them. Well, they love it because then like, oh, cool, my hands are made of metal, say the boys. But then that's what we do. And honestly, at this point, there are many other verses to Old Brass Wagon, but that's where we stop. Because the other verses I'm going to save for other weeks. So I'm just going to spiral this through my curriculum so that we start with this and then we go to another thing. And then later on, we can add the next verse, which is swing your partner, old brass wagon. And then we could add do-si-do, old brass wagon. You could do whatever you want, but usually that's where I stop. I stop on the third one. This is a cool song you can spiral throughout your curriculum, whether you do like those first 3 verses in K1 or 2, and then add in the more complicated like swing your partner or do-si-do or right-hand start or whatever you want. In the older grades. It's fun if you already know the song to then add another level to it. I actually have a favorite folk song set for this song so that it provides some visuals, it provides some explanations and things, and oftentimes I use that for kids when I bring the song back. But I don't do that in this lesson because really the point of using the song there for me is to slip in a 16th note. Circle to the left, old brass wagon, da-ka-da-ka-da. Old brass wagon, ticka-ticka-ta. So the 16th note is in there without me making a big deal about it. That's sort of why I chose the song. Also, we needed to do a little folk dance. Also, it's a pretty fun song, and we can spiral it back and bring it again later. But I don't bring out that favorite folk song set for this lesson because I see my kids once every 8 school days, and I just don't have the time for it in this lesson. So we do circle Old Brass Wagon, we do all 3, and then at the end, I say, wow, let's see what you remember. The first one is we go circle to the left, okay, right, and then we go circle to the right, okay, good, and then we do in and out, oh, good, okay, you remember all 3. Let's try all 3 at the same time. We'll do one, circle to the left, then we'll do the next one, circle to the right, then we'll do the next one, in and out. This is cool because it's helping them remember, it's helping them sequence, all good things. And usually at this point, I step away from the circle, I grab my ukulele or whatever, and I play along, and I let them do it and let them try. So then when they're done, I say, great, you can let go of hands and you can spread out to a personal space where you can see the smartboard. As long as you can see it and you're in a good personal space where you're not touching anyone or anything, you can have a seat. That's a long explanation. We've talked about personal spaces over and over. Now I just say, find a personal space and have a seat where you can see the screen. But now I want them to sort of scatter out and leave their friends alone as much as that's possible. So then it's now time to go to the note neighborhood to meet the note neighbors. So I'm going to flip y'all around because this works most of the time, but I'm going to try. Anyway, I'm going to flip y'all around so you can see my computer screen. If I remember how to do that on both of these platforms. There we go. Okay, so there's Instagram. Sorry, Facebook. I switch y'all around. Thanks for being good sports here. Okay, so then I have my smartboard set up, ready to go. It's actually the projector for my students. It's been on the whole time. Because I hate when you get through the middle of a lesson, you're like, okay, this needs to happen right now. My administrator just walked in and I need them to see this. And then I have to turn my projector on. So what I usually do at the beginning of the PowerPoint is I have just a black slide. I don't want this up on the screen because kids are going to just look at it and be like, what's Takadimi? Well, I don't want you to talk about that right now. I want you to learn them. Old Brass Wagon. So usually I actually take this intro slide and I delete it. And I add in a slide that looks just like this. It's just a basic slide with a black background. But the projector thinks that it's on and projecting a slideshow. And my kids don't see that the projector's on. So then I just run through the PowerPoint with them and I say, hi guys, we're so glad you could join us. We're at our friend's house because it's Friday. And usually it's not Friday when I present this PowerPoint. So let's say, wait, is it really Friday? And they're like, no, it's Monday. I'm like, oh, well, maybe when they took this picture, it was on a Friday. So that's why I said Friday. I don't know, kids always have an issue with it being Friday. Anyway, so if you've ever done the Note Neighborhood PowerPoints, the Note Neighborhood stories, basically it's just a set of stories to give you like a backstory to the notes and to note value. And the reason I do that is so that, kids can sort of remember notes and things, but I feel like when you give them a story or context to anything, when you give it a backstory, kids remember it easier and they remember things for a longer period and can use it better. So I just add these sort of silly little stories. I came up with these several years ago and I've been trying to make them better and better. But this one is about 16th notes. The kids already know the 2/8 notes, so ta's on the left, Dion's on the right. I use Takadimi as my syllable system, but I also have a set of PowerPoints for tika tika and ta, tt, in case you use that syllable system. But they meet Kablooey, the cowboy, and his sister Mimi, who loves to ski. But luckily they don't go by those long names because those are hard to remember. They just go by Ka and Me. Okay, and kids are like, well, that's not weird because they're used to seeing Ta, who is normally Tommy, get called Ta, and they're used to Dion get called D instead of Dion. So they're used to that. So whatever, don't worry about that. Just remember their nicknames, Ka and Me. Okay, so then they go down to the playground. It's weird for me because I usually have to explain what Foursquare is because a lot of kids don't play that at my school. So I usually spend like 20 seconds trying to explain the game. And then we move on. And in this PowerPoint, the whole shtick is that each character, once they get the ball, they say their name. So there they are in their Foursquare court, and then they say their name, and you can see the balls moving fast. And they go, ta, ka, me, ta, me, ka, di, me. And they're going back and forth. They say, wow, it was going so fast. It was like the ball was in 20 places at once. Let's do it again. And I will start. That's Ta speaking. Ta, ka, me, ta, ka, di, me, ta, ka, di, me, ta, ka, di, me. Oh my goodness, did you hear a pattern that time? And the kid, it is dawning on them. They are meeting Takadimi today. The one that they've been looking out on the wall for years, and they're like so excited. Okay, ta, ka, di, me, 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 ta, ka, di, me. We were going so fast, it was like we were one person. Let's see if we can do that pattern again, but I've got an idea. Ta, ka, di, me. Here we all are, and when we stand like this, we make the pattern that we said a minute ago. And I usually point along to each character. I point through each one so that kids are seeing when I say taka di mi, I'm seeing each one. Taka di mi. And then they sort of can see a resemblance of above the characters are those rectangles, which sort of mimics the shape of the four square chord, and that's going to come back a little bit later. But I sort of make a big deal, and the reason that this is going to come back later is because this delineates what's the difference between tadi, two pairs of eighth notes that are barred together, like four eighth notes barred together, and four 16th notes. The difference is that second bar, and they need to see that and use that. And that's going to come up again later, but I make a big deal. Oh yeah, it looks sort of like the four square chords right above us, or those three little rectangles. Oh man, let's say our names again. We can say it really fast in one beat. Takadimi. Let's read some patterns together. Ta, ta-di, takadimi, ta. And my little, the clicker that I use, I don't know if you can see this, but it has a laser on it. I don't know if you can see that in the video. Yeah, it has a laser. So on my smart board, it shows up. On this computer screen, it's not going to do that. But then I can sort of bounce along. I could be anywhere in the room, advancing the PowerPoint slides and using this laser to keep them in the right spot, and I can go stand by, little Timmy, Tommy, Tamara, Tia, whoever, they need you to be standing next to them, otherwise they're going to goof around. And so I can go stand by them and still be in control of the PowerPoint in the lesson. So I love this little clicker. And I think I've shared the link to that before, but if you're interested, let me know and I'll put that back in the show notes. But anyway, so we go through, we read Takadimi with different variations. The sassy half note shows up, and they love her / hate her. So it's a love-hate. She's sassy, but it's fun. So we do the sassy half note. She comes in for a few different patterns. She gets tired, has to go walk her poodle, so she leaves her hat, which becomes the half rest. They've already interacted with all of this material before in separate PowerPoints, but in this, at the end of this PowerPoint here, they're going to integrate that previous knowledge in with the new information, which is Takadimi. So they go through, they do their whole thing, and then before we leave, I let them see the notes. Usually in my lesson that I'm teaching this week, we don't have the time to go through this practice page. Maybe you would. But I at least point out to kids, oh look, there's Takadimi without each character's hat and hair and whatever, and oh look, there's the sassy half note. Well, she doesn't have her glasses on or whatever, but you still know who it is. Because again, I'm just trying to make the connection between these sort of stylized characters and standard notation. I want them to be able to see that and make sense of that. Okay, so then once this is over, then it's time for us to do a little bit of composition and dictation. And I say in these videos, I'm going to show you everything I use. Well, guess what? I went and did a workshop in Illinois on Friday. And then today was MLK Day and we didn't have school, so I didn't have a chance to go get the things that I actually use. So instead of using popsicle sticks, which is what I would use in my classroom, I'm going to show you the process of what we did with markers, because who doesn't love a good marker? So let me just show you. Anyway, so let me show you what we do then. As I say, we've got these sticks. Well, for us, it's markers. We've got these sticks, and we're going to do a little bit of creating our own notes with these sticks. So let's see if you can make a ta. And then I draw a ta on the board, and we make a stick just sort of on its own like this. Okay, perfect. So let's see. You've got ta. What about ta-di? Okay, so if you wanted a ta-di, you can't just do that because that's two tas on their own. So what if we did, that on top? Okay, perfect. So that can be ta-di. You know the difference between these two. There's, Instagram, can't see. There's ta-di, and then there's ta. Easy to sort of tell. Okay, great. What if we wanted to do a rest? We would need to do something that looks sort of like a rest. And so I draw on the whiteboard what a picture of a rest would look like. And then with my sticks, and I've got a set of popsicle sticks that have magnets on the back so they can go right on the whiteboard and I can show kids. And we make the little Z shape. Okay, that'll work perfect for a rest. Great. Okay, so then we take the sticks and I say, I'm going to give you a pattern and I want you to create it with sticks. And your pattern is ta, ta-dee, taka-dee-me, ta. Okay, so then they get to work. And I have them sit next to partners, but, oh, I lied. We don't even jump into this. I say, we need to do taka-dee-me first. I'm so sorry. I would remember with kids, I'm sure, every single time. And I just flubbed with y'all. So taka-dee-me we need to make. Let's see. Instagram, I don't know if you can even see that yet. Sorry. So we need to make taka-dee-me, and I say this, and I make it on the board. This is not taka-dee-me. Sorry, it's not. And sometimes kids are like, wait, but it looks right. And I say, gosh, there's something important about taka-dee-me that makes it different. And at this point, I might say, like you could make toddy, and bar them together. You could do that. That's possible. You are allowed to do that. Sorry, Instagram, I know you can't really see this. Sometimes I'll talk about that. Other times, kids don't care. They just want to know, why does it not work? So, let's see, Instagram, can you see that a little better? There we go. So you can bar them together like that, but that really, when you do this, that is toddy. Sometimes I'll talk about that. Other times I'll just say, you can't forget that second line, remember? Because then you make the 4 square shape. Well, it's really 3 square, but you make that 3 square shape up on the top. If you don't have that, you don't have the 3 square shape. That's why I go over it on the Note Neighborhood PowerPoint, because they can, even if they don't remember to put the second bar, they can identify that there are not 3 rectangles on the top of their note, and that's really important. And so we take a second to do that. Okay, let me jump back to where I skipped ahead. So I gave them that, then I would give them the rhythm that they need to come up with. So I'd say ta, ta-dee, taka-dee-me, ta. They're sitting in groups of 2 or 3, usually not because they're working together, but just because they're sharing resources. And I remind them of that, and so they make their little shapes. I love how this is like sort of working with these markers. And maybe I can use this as an excuse to go buy more markers because I don't have enough to do this video. Okay, so we've got ta, ta-dee, taka-dee-me, ta. This, again, would be all with popsicle sticks, not my fine tip markers. But yes, then they would do that. We would do usually 2 or 3 or 4 of these, depending on how much time we have left in the lesson. And then one of my favorite things to do is to throw in ta, taka-dee-me, ta, with a rest. And so then they have to, sometimes they'll just mess it up, and they'll do that. If I say ta, taka-dee-me, ta. And one of the things I say to kids is, you need to maybe watch on this one, because in my classroom, when we do a rest, we don't go shh, because even the shh is sound, and a rest is silence. So instead of going ta, shh, taka-dee-me, ta, I go ta, and I say the word ta, but no sound comes out of my mouth. And kids know that in my class, they're allowed to shout a rest as long as no sound comes out of their mouth. So it's funny to see them shouting like with a completely, like I'm screaming as loud as I can face, but no sound coming out. It's pretty funny. So in here, there should be a rest. So I say to kids sometimes like, watch me as I read it, or as I say it, and then they get to do it. And then they'll see me doing the rest face without the rest sound. Okay, so then they make their little rest in there, right? Eventually, I try and get into doing a half note, and the kids will say, usually when we start the lesson, they'll say, what about the half note? I'll say, oh, we'll get to that if we get to that. And I love to see what kids come up with, because there really is not a great way to do a half note with sticks. And so I say ta, taka-dee-me, ta, or usually I would have switched that pattern out, but I don't want to mess with those markers right now. So I would say ta, talking to you, telling, I go, how do we make the half note? And I say, just see if you can come up with a creative way. And after they've, had 20 or 30 seconds to try and figure out cool ways to do that, I say, you know what, I saw someone did this, where they put a ta and then they put a line behind it to sort of show that that space was taken up. That shows me a half note, 2 beats of note. But you know what you could also do? I saw someone do this, which showed me a ta, but it was like a double ta almost. 2 sticks right next to each other. That definitely shows me it's sort of double the value. Or you know what? I also saw someone do this, where they tried to create the shape of the half note by using sticks, but that's kind of hard because, you've got just a straight piece there, and really you need something rounded. But I did also see someone come up with this, and that's a pretty cool way to make a half note too. I love that you're making all these things with your sticks. It's showing kids like there are a lot of different answers, and there are a lot of different correct answers, and there is no correct way to show a half note using stick notation because you just can't really do it. And so this is you can come up with a lot of different ways. And usually I say, okay, those are all great ways, but this is how I would probably do it if I were going to do it, but it really doesn't matter. You guys can come up with whatever you want. So that's sort of where the lesson ends, because we're out of time at that point. We've actually fit in quite a bit. So then what I say is we're picking up, I put all my sticks in a bag, just sort of an old tote, like a cloth, I don't know, you go to the grocery store and you have those reusable bags, and I hand it to one kid and I say, you are the Stick Master General. And I say to the class, this is the Stick Master General. We need to make sure all the sticks are back in the bag before we leave. So make sure that you get everything back to him. He is in charge. Okay, Stick Master General, ready, go. And then he gets to go, or she gets to go, or whoever gets to go and put all of those sticks back in the bag before we leave. Okay, let's see if I can turn y'all back around. Okay. And so that's the end of my lesson. That's sort of as far as we can get with 16th notes in this day. And then in the next lesson, there are a lot of options. Usually what I do in my next lesson is we do more of Old Brass Wagon, because we started that in this day. We do more of Old Brass Wagon. And then instead of doing 16th notes with the sticks, you could do a lot of things. There is, with every Note Neighborhood teacher kit, I have an introduction PowerPoint, and then I also have a practice PowerPoint. So there's a whole nother story where the 16th notes and friends go to they go to like a food truck festival, and they're going to meet at the taco truck or whatever, and then you see there are lines for each taco truck, so then you have 2 or 3 lines set up of notes that you have to read, and 16th notes are interspersed in there. So they get practice not only reading 16th notes again, but they get a multi-line reading. So that usually shows up in the next lesson. And then I pull out my whiteboards, and instead of doing a stick notation version of it, we do actual creating of notes. In that lesson, we don't do composition so much. We don't do dictation so much. It's mostly getting the chance of actually creating the notes, because we haven't really done that much up to this point. So they're actually creating standard notation, and we might do just like really simple dictation where they do just a 4-beat pattern. But if we get to that in the lesson, that is great. But I would be happy at the end of next lesson to have a little bit of practice with 16th notes, add more to Old Brass Wagon, and then also just have the sensation of actually drawing and creating the notes. Because then later on, you don't have to waste so much time of, don't forget, you got to color it in. If you take the time in that one lesson to really, really show them how to create the notes correctly and how to do all that, then you spend less time on it later. So that's my 3rd grade lesson, and it gives. I know we covered a lot of things, but I try to put in the notes for this video, which you can find if you're on Facebook. You can scroll to the end of the caption for the video, or if you're on Instagram, it's in my link in profile. But you can click on that, and it says like Musical Mondays Recap, and in there I have a lot of the links for the things we talked about, the blog post with the station signs for centers, and the Note Neighborhood, and Old Brass Wagon, and some other things in there that I've talked about. If there's anything I left on that list, let me know, and I'll definitely put a link in there, because I know I talked about like the station sign stands and things. I'll try and put that in there too. But if I forget anything, let me know, and let me just make sure I've gotten through all my comments here. Karen says she loves Old Brass Wagon. It's your ringtone? That's awesome. I have some nerdy or recordings for my ringtones. Xylophones, etc. Recorder, good times. Let's see. Lisa says, I saw someone use the rings from a gallon milk jug for half and whole notes. Ooh, that's a cool idea. Thank you so much for everybody who's left comments and things in here. I like how you pause to show them 4/8 with 1 bar is allowed before you make the 16th. Yes, because Kimberly, kids, then they know when they've got it wrong. It's not just like it's an incorrect, it'll never happen, but it's something that it means something else. Do you give popsicle sticks to everyone, or are they in small groups? Yes, I do. I usually do groups of 2, and then they share the popsicle sticks. They're not working together, but they're sharing. It means I have to drop less popsicle sticks as I go, but it also means that they can sort of help each other if they need to. And you also said, do you find popsicle sticks better than... And then your comment is cut off, and I can't see it when I'm actually live, but I can see it later, and I will answer it. And I'm going to say, yes, popsicle sticks are better than... ... I don't know. I'm not sure what else you're going to say, so I don't know if I can really say that. Let's see. I call actual folk dance moves the fancy way, Kelsey. So do I sometimes. Let's see. Connect the circle instead of grab hands or take hands. That's a cool thing. I also like saying class-sized circles because then they know the whole class has to be a part of it. Let's see. Going way back to the beginning, Susan says, I use blue cones with numbers on them for centers. I borrowed them from the PE teacher. And it sounds like you're never going to give them back because it sounds like they're working great. That's a cool thing. And you can also tape onto the cones or put onto the cones, and they probably stack for you pretty well. Yeah, cool. Keytar station. Like I said, with those station signs, if there's anything that you use that are not in there, let me know and I'll put them. So if you have like a keytar station or a melodica station or whatever, I can put those things in there for you. Cool. I think I got through most of the questions, but as always, I go back and I look through them at the end to try and answer things. So even in the coming week, if you're watching this later or you're watching it some other time on YouTube, I always go back and try and answer those questions as best I can. Karen says, have you tried pre-bagging the sticks? For example, 20 sticks in a bag and just pass out the bags. Yes, but that adds an extra step. Because for me, kids then I'm worried about, please don't pop the bags, get everything back in the bags. Then they're spending time trying to zip the bags. For me, it's easier to just put it all in one big tote, grab a handful and drop, and then move on. That process takes, to hand out, it takes 20 seconds to the whole class. Bags may take longer. At the end of class, though, putting away in the little baggies and doing all that, it just takes too long for me. And so I just say, here's the bag, make sure they're on the bag, and I really don't have a lot of problems with it. So, I don't know, different strokes for different folks, but that's sort of the way I do it. And I hope that just saves time, but it saves me time and stress too. Cool, well, thanks so much everyone for watching today. I'm really excited. Like I said, I talked a little bit about centers, and next month I'm going to be at Texas Music Educators talking about centers. I just came from Collinsville, Illinois to do a whole day-long workshop about centers. So I'm very passionate about centers. I'm hoping to bring more of those ideas back to these videos in the coming weeks. But if you have any questions or comments, please send me an email, send me a direct message. I'd be happy to answer those, and continue to leave your comments in the videos. That's super helpful. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great week.